Hi, hey Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. I can't hardly put this down. Anyway, I'll be wondering where I put that later on. You watch. Today I'm going to start on a new project. There's a video out there by Ted Baldwin. It said how to cut small pieces safely. And he has this video in particular. What attracted me to it is it's about doing all that on the Mitersaw. Now, usually if I want to cut small pieces, and when we're talking about small pieces, we're talking about pieces even smaller than this sometimes. And quite honestly, the table saw is a pretty good place to do that with a good crosscut sled. Sometimes I do it on the bandsaw. But in all reality, there's no reason why you can't do it over here. And I know the first question is, why? Why bother if you have the others? Well, first off, not everybody has quality on the others. When I first started off in tools, this I paid 4 times as much for as I did on my first table saw. I had a lot more money wrapped up in this, and quite honestly, it is a very accurate cutting tool. And I tend to go to this thing early on when I had that table saw. Well, now that I have the setup I have, yes, I do go to my table saw. So one of the reasons is sometimes you can actually get better cuts here than you can on your table saw or your bandsaw, depending upon what kind of equipment you have in the shop. The other thing is sometimes I set something up on my table saw that I'm doing and I need to go back to it. I don't want to have to reset it up for whatever reason. So then I got to cut some small pieces. Well, I do have the option of doing it here. So this is why I feel that it's a good thing to have. If you can take a tool and expand what it can do, what's wrong with that? So anyway, and sometimes there may be somebody that has a little tiny shop where they have something like this in their workshop, but they don't really even have a table saw. There's actually some people out there like that, believe it or not. So let me show you how to cut small pieces on here with my idea. Like I said, there's a guy out there named Ted Baldwin that has done that video, and that, like I told you. So I got a lot of my ideas from Ted. I hate to say this, but I am going to assign homework because you really should go watch that so that you can kind of get an idea of where I'm going with this. Mine is going to go to a whole new level, though. When you look at other people's ideas, sometimes you got to think outside the box to make it even better. I think we can do that with this one. So I think we can come up with an end product once we're done that really should be a very nice idea, and it should be a very good substitute for using the table saw when you're done. Because there's no reason why this saw, you have a lot of control on this saw, believe it or not. There's just some simple rules that you always should follow when you're using this thing, because this thing can also bite you just like the table saw can. So with all that in mind, let me show you what I've got. So normally my miter saw I have these face pieces with T-slots here, and the carriage bolts go in it, and they go into my slots here to hold it in place, and then I can slide it back and forth for different angles and different clearances. So, and those are the ones I normally have on here. But in order to use it as a small parts table, I thought, now let's just take that off and put the other table on. So I designed my table as simply, since it's a prototype, as simply as I could. 1/4-inch plywood. I have 220 sandpaper on the whole thing and on the fence part of it. It has some bolts on the back side here that will go into those slots to line it up. And then I just line it up to my blade. Yes, I did put a laser marker on here, and we'll go over that here in a minute, but that's kind of nice to have on there. Now, when you use this in this mode, it always stays at 90 degrees. And that way, any angles you want to cut, you do it on your table surface, not by turning the blade and that sort of thing. So that's one thing that makes this more like a table saw crosscut sled. You're in control completely, and when you're moving your saw blade, it's always going to stay at 90 degrees to whatever you do here. So let's go ahead and let's put this in place. Oh, real quick, this arm here, this piece here is set up so that I have a pin here that I can put into here, and this pin then will go up underneath here and wedge in so that this will hold the back end of this table down tight. So also, because of this slot here, these two sides can actually shift, and you may not be flat here, especially if you just have it stored somewhere. So I took an old trick that I used on my tabletop for my bandsaw, and actually that came from the idea of the bandsaw itself, because they have the same kind of cut for the getting the blade. Hey! Sorry, I thought my dog was taking off. Anyway, I got that trick from the bandsaw because they use that metal pin in theirs to keep those two sides level at all times. Otherwise, they could shift. Big time could happen to this. So I drilled the hole right in the center, and this stays in there whenever I store this thing, so as to keep things level. Obviously, once I mount it, then it's going to stay pretty flat anyway. So, and it has a 3-point contact, a bolt here, and the wedge under here. So that makes it nice and solid, and it should stay flat when it's installed. To install it is actually pretty easy. You just put it together, line it up. I kind of line the slot up to here, and then I put it in and drop it in place. And now they're all sticking out. And I have some of these. I only use 2 of them. And they go on here, like so. It usually takes only a couple minutes to do this whole setup. So now I pull the pin out, and I bring this into the pin, and I make sure that I'm nice and just barely touching this side of my slot right here. And I check it throughout the slot to make sure that it looks like it's riding. Everything looks real good, so now I can just tighten this down. So I apply pressure here on both sides, down and backwards, and I tighten these 2 up. Now the reason for this is because you still can get movement. So in order to stop that, that's when I use this with the 1/2-inch dowel. Goes in the hole, and then give it a nice little shove, and now it's wedged to hold this in place. So this works out real well. What? Huh? In the back? What? I can do. Then why didn't I think of that? He just told me that I should have made this using a 3/4-inch dowel. Same thing. And use a 3/4-inch dowel here, so that then I could use this same piece when it's in storage and put it here. Thanks. See, that's why I like to get your help. Anyway, thanks. I appreciate that there in the back. So anyway, once this is all set up, this thing is actually ready now for me to use. And there's a couple of things that I want to be able to do with it. Some of the accessories I haven't even made yet. But basically, not only can I take a piece and just set it here to cut it, or I can set a piece right here, and if I want to cut something, I can bring it out away from my fence to cut it out here. If I want to cut something at a particular angle, I could take a board. For example, 45 is a common angle. So if I want to cut some 45s on here, I can take this template that I made that tucks up underneath here in place and sets up against this edge and against this edge flat. I now have a 45 so I can take and I can cut pieces here. And the nice thing is that I can cut them this way, or I can flip it up and hold it and cut it this way to get it set up where I want it. I can hold it in place, or I can grab some kind of hold down if I don't want my fingers, or if it's a little small piece I'm cutting, I can grab a hold down and put on there to hold that piece in place while I make my cut safely. So I'm working on making some kind of hold down for this. Don't know what I'm going to end up with for sure yet. Any suggestions on that? Appreciate it. So I want to get a good hold down made for this so I can hold small pieces. But because of the sandpaper here, if I want to take a piece of wood, even a small piece like this, and I want to cut it at a particular angle, so I put it on here. Let's just draw an arbitrary angle. So I want to take, oops, sorry, there we go. All right, so I got an angle I want to cut. If I use my laser, I can turn it on, move this over. I can actually line this up on that laser line then. Now, I can make that cut safely right here because I'm sandwiched to here. And there's no way that with a proper hold down here and pressure, this piece is not going to go anywhere. And I can control my cut here very carefully to make this cut. And actually I can cut pretty small pieces doing that sort of thing if I want. If I'm going to do a lot of them, I can take a regular piece of board, cut my angle on this flat piece, and then use that in place so that now I can set lots of pieces in place. And I can make this a lower fence, higher fence. In about 3 minutes, just take a plain piece of plywood and a couple of brad nails and glue. I can make a plate to give me any angle I want to do lots of little pieces. Now I have my 45 already, which I'll keep. I also want to do one of these with a 30-degree angle and a 60-degree angle. I think those would be handy to have. So I'm just kind of looking at the different ones that I would want and accessories for this. The laser line will really help you line up. And when you set this up, make sure that when you turn it on, and I have my laser line here, if you take a look, you'll see I can see this laser line right here on the tip of my saw blades. So I know that I'm cutting, that my laser line is accurate. And if I line up to a pre-made mark, I can then make that cut and get the angle I want easily. So the other thing I want to set up on this is I want to take, let's say for example, I want to be able to set up for multi-angles. So I want to put a piece like this here that will pivot, and I can set it to any angle I want, lock it down, and then I have my angle preset. Make this piece adjustable, a waist piece that I then can bring this over, make a quick cut, and I now have a zero clearance on 2 angles when I make my cut on my piece, quick and easy. So I want to make some kind of fence system here that is adjustable for angle. The other thing I want to do is, I notice that when I'm cutting on this side of the fence, let's say like this, I'm pulling my big piece away, and I do my cut here. This dust collection is only through here, and everything else kind of splatters all back in here, so it actually creates a little bit more of a mess. So what I want to do is that since I have my other hose here, that if I want to do a lot of cuts and I don't want sawdust, I'm going to create some kind of attaching holder for my hose so that I can hopefully then take this and be able to hold this in place wherever I want. Similar to what you see on a lot of the drill presses. That way I can have some good dust collection on here also. So that's kind of where I'm at, the start of what I want. I think that there's a lot I can do with this, and once you set the initial part up and start cutting little pieces, get your safety device made for hold down, I think you'll find that this is actually a pretty good way to make accurate, simple cuts. I also want to incorporate my anchor jig into this thing too, so that I can actually set that up so I can do multiple cuts to the same repeatable size. So I want to be able to adapt my Incrajig to this system too, to this tabletop. Would you use that all the time? No. It would be an attachment that I can take on and take off of my table when my table is sitting here. So I like the system. I think this here works nice. I don't really like this thing sticking up here like this in the way. I don't think I'll hurt it, but I don't really like it. So I don't know that this is going to work real well. Maybe make this a place with pins so it drops on in the same place every time. Maybe I can do that, or make it a flip down out of the way when it's not in use. So anyway, any thoughts on nice things? I appreciate it. Hopefully we can make something pretty good together that I think would be very handy on here. So this is the start. This is kind of where I'm at with it. And I thought after a while I was still working on it, and I thought maybe I should kind of bring you in on this now rather than showing you the end product. Already you saw, thanks, in the back of the room, you already saw where this becomes one piece that has double use on the jig. So this was a great idea. I want to thank you for that. So anyway, if you have any questions or comments or observations, leave them in the comment section down below. All comments are appreciated. If you like this video or you learned something here, hit that like button. Don't be afraid to go see Ted Baldwin's video. It's about 50 minutes long, but quite honestly, it's worth it. I'm sorry I have to assign homework, but yes, you really should go look at that. Most importantly, though, as I was saying, please come back again, because I'm nowhere near done. Thanks, and we'll see you again soon.